Hi, my name is Miriam, and this is the Black TV Show podcast. This is where I talk about my favorite TV show episodes, currently talking about season 2 of The Cosby Show. Welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 48, The Cosby Show season 2, episode 25, Denise's Decision. The last episode of season 2, of course. This episode aired May 15th, 1986. It's crazy. We've already done season 2. We started this podcast at the beginning of this year, and it's already summertime. It's my birthday month. It's crazy how far we've gone. And it's crazy how consistent I have been. I'm on my own. I do everything. I record, I edit, I publish it. I do all the social media. So it's a lot of work. So I'm surprised I've been able to keep up with it, but I'm happy I've been able to. So we are on this last episode where we're in the living room where Claire is listening to music, and Cliff comes in and smiles at her, and they start to dance, and to the point where Cliff kind of falls when they're dancing. They think they're young, and we find out that they're listening to the song "Evening in Paradise" by Little Jimmy Scott. And so Claire got the record at the record store when she went with Sandra. And Cliff says, "Oh, I haven't heard this song in 100 years." Of course, he's exaggerating. I tend to say that too. And he says that they danced to this record every time they were at the Bluebird Club. And Cliff says, in 1962. And Claire was like, no, that's not when the song came out. It came out in 1960. And Cliff was like, no, Little Jimmy Scott recorded this song in 1962. And so they decided to make a bet to see who had the right answer. And so the bet is that the loser will serve the entire dinner tonight and clean afterwards. Then they will serve breakfast to the winner in bed and also wash the person's car the next morning. And Cliff tries to go get the record after making this bet. And by the way, this whole bet has been recorded on paper, so it is legal, okay, according to Claire. So she wrote everything down. And, Claire was like, no, you're going to cheat. You're going to say something else. And Denise comes down and Claire says, take the record. And, she's the partial judge. She's not on anybody's side. And so they asked Denise to check the record and see what the date is. So it was recorded in New York City on April 7th, 1960. No two. It's just 1960. So that means Claire has won the bet, and you can see it in her face. She's like, yeah, right. I won that bet. And Cliff says, no, but we danced in 1962. And so he started to say different things. And Claire was like, no, let the record show. And, she wrote everything down. And this is perfectly legal, and she knows because she is a lawyer, okay? And so while this is happening, Denise went out to get the mail, and she got a letter from Berkeley in California, and she got accepted to the late admissions. And Denise was like, oh, this is another one. And Claire was like, so you decided to go to Berkeley? And she was like, no, I haven't decided. I don't know what school to go to. This is a great school, a school that accepted me. And, she has narrowed it down to 4 schools, which is NYU, Hillman, University of North Dakota. And when she said University of North Dakota, Cliff was like, huh? Why North Dakota? And which is weird because I've been to North Dakota so many times because it's right on the border of Canada. It's a nice state. I don't usually stay in that state. I usually we're driving to Minnesota usually, but it's weird to hear certain states that are closer to home for me. And she also said University of Hawaii because and you remember there was an episode in season 1, she said that I think I've decided that I'm going to go to University of Hawaii because of the cold that they endure in New York City. And so Cliff asked, why North Dakota? I know it's a good school, but why? And she's like, because I will be the only one going there. It's such a logical answer, you know? Like, for me, like when I chose the school, I ended up going to a school where most of my friends that I went to high school went. I feel like it's different in the States. In the States, you end up splitting up with your friends. They end up going to different schools than you. I think that's a more normal thing there in the States. But here, it's like you go to this university that's local in your province. And Claire says, so you need to pick a school. These schools have deadlines. And Denise was like, yeah, but, this is like the most important decision of my life. And Cliff says, you need to make a decision. And so Denise says, okay, tonight after dinner, I'll make the decision. And so Claire and Cliff look at each other and point at each other and says, that's your child. And so we cut to Denise's room where Sandra's there typing on a typewriter. And Denise asked Sandra, like, can you help me with this decision? And I'm sorry if I'm saying the word decision. I'm saying it wrong again. I'm having issue with that word. There's times where I'm good at saying certain words, but then there's times I can't say that word, which is weird. Like, I can make my own decision. I think now I said it right, but it's weird. And Sandra was like, I cannot be picking colleges for you. You're an adult. You need to make your own decision. And Denise asked Sandra, like, just tell me which college to go and then I'll stop, And Vanessa says, Vanessa sees this is happening. So she comes in and says, oh, you need to go away. You need to go to a college that's not in New York. And Denise points out, if I go to NYU, I'm still staying in this house. So I'll be staying in the room. And Vanessa's like, no. You need to go. Because basically what Vanessa wants is her room when Denise goes away to school. So we cut to being in the kitchen, and Claire and Cliff are cooking. And Cliff asks Claire, when did Ella Fitzgerald, oh my god, I'm saying her name wrong, this legendary singer, one of her songs came out, and she's saying like double or nothing on the bet. And Claire was like, I don't want to. I'm not partaking in this bet. And Cliff says, oh, because you don't know the answer. And she just doesn't want this. And so Claire talks about what she's expecting tomorrow. She is expecting him in a tuxedo at 8 a.m. serving her crepes with baked apples, walnuts, slightly sprinkled with cinnamon, a napkin, and a red rose that's slightly opened with the morning newspaper. And she is serious about it. And Cliff was like, if I had one, I would have just asked for a bowl of cereal and a slice of white bread. And Claire was like, you lie. If you had one, you would have demanded French toast, home-baked bread, send Claire to a tree for fresh maple syrup. What? So, it's like, I don't know what it's called now because they have changed the name, but it's like the Aunt Jemima, syrup. I like that. I wouldn't go for going to a tree to get real maple syrup. That seems very strange. But yet again, they're in New York. It's cold and everything. It's a normal. I feel like it's a thing in the East. And so Sandra, Theo, and Vanessa come home from the grocery store, and Vanessa asks, "Has Denise made her decision?" And she has not. Vanessa asks, if she doesn't go to the college, would it be okay to paint her room? What? You're so selfish, Vanessa, right now. Okay? And Theo says, Dad didn't tell you? If Denise leaves, he's going to turn her bedroom into a den. And Vanessa's like, no, what? No! And Sandra was like, Theo's just joking. And Cliff says, yeah, we're going to turn it into a bowling alley. Now we know that Cliff is definitely joking. And Vanessa says, this is not fair. She's been dragging it out for weeks. And Claire says, choosing college isn't easy, which is true. That is true. If I could go back in time, I probably would go to Howard University because it produced a lot of great people, like Felicia Rashad. And Theo was like, this decision would be so easy. I would pick Berkeley. And the reason why he picked Berkeley is because it's the California coast, of course, and the 70-degree weather all year long, wear shorts, you drive with the top down. And Claire says, I think Denise is considering more than the weather. And Sandra says, she's indecisive. And I love the way she said, she's indecisive. So Sandra says that she's indecisive indicates more of a complex trouble. And I love how she says indecisive because, like, I had a friend back in grade 12. I feel like this was like AP Bio. And someone asked him a question and he says, I'm indecisive. And then that was just the thing. Like, he's like, when we think of him, we think he's indecisive, So that just, in my mind, made me laugh. It may not make sense to you guys. But Cliff asked Vanessa, like, do you know what Sandra's talking about? Because, like, okay, let me read what she said again. She said, Denise has indecisive indicates a more complex trouble. So indecisive is like you can't really decide anything. And so she's saying it's a more complex issue on Denise. And so Sandra says, subconsciously, Denise may not want to go to college. She might need to take some time off from college, and she can go do emotional exploration. Vanessa says she won't do that in this house, right? Because all she's thinking about is that room, okay? And Sandra says no. She would go travel, see what's out there. And Sandra says, the greatest classroom is life. I always say that. I honestly say that, and I always think of the University of Life. And guess who says that in this episode? Cliff. He's like, the University of Life, and he understands that some of its graduates go on to move back in with their parents. That's not what I think of University of Life, but I've always wanted to make a T-shirt line with saying University of Life because I feel like every day we're learning. We're always learning. Every lesson every issue that we encounter with on a daily basis is a learning lesson for us, and I think that is. I stand with Sandra with you saying. We're in this life of University of Life, and I love traveling, and traveling is such a great opportunity. When I went on my solo trip, I was on my own. I was depending on myself, so it was a great learning lesson of how I could be an independent person, not depending on someone else to figure out where I'm going, what I'm doing, figure out what to eat and all that stuff. So I'm with Sandra on this, okay? So Claire says that, Cliff has to take the hors d'oeuvres out since he lost the bet, and that he needs to come back so he can place the glasses in the dining room. And so Cliff goes in the living room and he sees Rudy, and she's sad because she hates college because it takes everyone away, like Sandra and now Denise. And Cliff says, oh, I'm sad and I feel pitiful. And they were looking at a glass to look at their faces, see how pitiful they look. And Rudy says, I feel the same. And Rudy says, we should tell Denise to not go. And Cliff says, but then Denise is going to feel sad. And Rudy says, we don't want her to feel sad. And Rudy says, she'll come home for Thanksgiving just like Sandra, and they can call Denise on the phone, or they can drive to the school on the weekends and hang out with her. And so, Cliff says to Rudy, thank you for making me feel better. Of course, this is like reverse psychology on Rudy, the way that he talked to her. Because, he wasn't gonna do anything to go tell Denise to stop going. And it helped Rudy, in a way, it helped Rudy feel better about the fact that Denise will be going away for college. And so we end the Act 1 and we go into Act 2. And Theo sees the hors d'oeuvres and he grabs it, and Cliff calls him out and says, stop. And Theo knows that, you're not supposed to have hors d'oeuvres before the guests come. And Cliff says, no, it's okay. You can have some. You're fine. And like Theo's like, huh? What? Because this is not usually. And so Cliff asks Theo, what are you doing tomorrow? And Theo's like, he already knows what's up. He's like, I can't wash Mom's car tomorrow. Mom said that we're not allowed to help at all. And Cliff says, put the hors d'oeuvres back. And what he does is put it in his mouth. Yeah, that's what I would do, okay? Because he said it, at first he said I was allowed to have it, so why wouldn't I? And so Cliff's parents come in, Russell and Anna, and Denise comes down, and Russell's like, oh, tonight's the night that you make your big decision. And she says, yeah, I've already made it up. I'm going to follow into my father's footsteps. And when she says that, Russell's like, oh, yay, you're going to go to Hillman. And instead she says, I'm going to join the Navy. And Anna laughs. She's like, oh, that's so funny. And Russell's like, not really. And so she says, she's going to make her announcement after dinner, and she's narrowed it down to 2 schools, Hillman and NYU. By the way, NYU is New York University, by the way, if people didn't know what NYU is. That's why if she goes to NYU, she would be staying at home, because we would, it's in the same city. And I believe Theo ends up going to NYU in the later seasons. And so Anna says that Hillman is a special place for their family. All your grandparents, your parents have gone there, and that this, it would be a good school for her to go. And Anna says she needs to go to the kitchen. She's ready to cook. She's in the cooking mood, not in the eating mood. And Cliff was like, well, I'm in the eating mood. And Russell says, no, you're gonna go in the kitchen and help your mom. And so Cliff leaves. And before Cliff leaves, he asks Russell for 50 cents, because that's what Russell does when he asks for something from the kids. They ask for money, so he gives Cliff 50 cents. I don't know if that really helps him, because Cliff makes the big bucks as a doctor, so 50 cents doesn't really help. So I'm not sure, at least like $10, okay, or I guess back then $5, And so Russell, asks Denise, like, what else do you need to know about Hillman that you don't understand? She's like, nothing. I know everything. I know everything about Hillman. And Russell says, Hillman has, Dr. Zachariah J. Haynes, who is the president of Hillman. And we do meet this president in the last episode of season 3. So later on this year, we'll be able to talk about that. And he's been there for 50 years, which is a very long career, honestly. I think the normal career length until you reach retirement is usually 40 years. So the fact that he's gone more than 40 years is, remarkable. He really loves his job, clearly. And he's 80 years old, and he knows all the students by name. This must be a small university, okay? Because I don't think there's that many people that, I don't think the president of my university would know everyone's name by, wouldn't know every student's name, because there's thousands of students, okay? And Russell talks about, Cliff had troubles in calculus, and Zachariah took him in and got a tutor for him. And Russell one day got a phone call from Mrs. Haynes saying, Cliff keeps showing up for dinner every night. Can you tell him to stop? And Russell saying, Zachary cares for his students. And Denise says, Hillman is too far from home. Russell says, once you go to Hillman, Hillman will be your home. And so we cut to being in the dining room for dinner, and everyone had dinner. And Anna points out that Cliff has been on his feet the whole time, and why doesn't he sit down? And Claire says he can't. He lost the bets. And so Anna was like, oh, if in that case, then can I have some more coffee? And then Theo jumps in and says, can I have more baked potato? And Cliff looks at him like, why would you ask that? Why would you ask that? That's so disrespectful in a way, And Claire says, why don't you bring potato for everyone, And Russell's like, no, let's save that for later. Dinner is officially over and it's time for Denise's decision. And Theo says, okay, I will take a break for now. And Denise gets up and says, she doesn't want to leave, this home cooked meal. And Vanessa is like, oh no, she picked NYU. And Denise says, no, just wait. But I want to, the school that she chose is everything that she wanted to, and has produced people doing great things like having her. And of course, when she says that, we know she is talking about Hillman. And everyone is happy, and Vanessa hugs her and says, I love you, And so Russell, proposes a toast to Denise and says, when you were born, I knew you were going to go to Hillman. And Anna was like, well, he said that about every child. And, Anna says that, we're very proud of you. And Sandra says, I have a few words. And Cliff is like, do we need a dictionary for this? And she's like, no. So Sandra says, congratulations. Denise will become a leader, influence person at Hillman. Pretty soon, everyone will be dressing weird and having weird hairstyles. So true. So true. I love the speech. No dictionary needed to understand what she was saying, because Sabrina does such a good job with playing Sandra. Like Sandra's just like that smart child that has like her brain. Like when she read a textbook, she has it all in her brain and she's able to just spit it out. And so, and I love the way she talks, and so. I just want to give Sabrina a shout out right there, okay? And so Theo does a speech and says, he approves Denise going to Hillman, even though it's not the coast of California, and that he's okay looking after her car. And she's like, no, I'm taking my car to Hillman. And she was like, in that case, I'm really sad you're leaving. And he also mentions that, he's available for to interview potential roommates. And they're like, no, okay, no. And so Vanessa says, she can come home from school and perfectly use her room rent free. Vanessa says she will come home. Vanessa says that Denise can come home from school and she perfectly can use her new room for a small fee. Okay, that's so rude. She's giving up her room to give to you. You can't charge her any money for that. And so then Rudy goes to her and says, she doesn't want her to go, and she's gonna miss her and love her very much. And she also asked Denise to bring a teacher for her back from Hillman, and Denise is like, yeah, of course. And they give each other Zerberts. And Cliff and Claire wrote something to say, and I want them to say it because I feel like I can't really do it justice. So listen.
The difference between you now and you then is that you then were priceless and helpless.
You now are still beyond price, but we are letting you go slowly but certainly.
And we feel you slipping from our hands as we remember you then. And pray for you now. We are forever your mother.
And your father.
And we see Denise gets very emotional. Of course, Claire is emotional too. And Cliff looks like he's about to give a hug to Denise and ends up hugging Theo, as a joke. And Denise hugs Claire, and we end the episode right there. And this is the final episode of season 2. Crazy, just crazy how we've gone to up to season 2 now. So we had 2 guest stars, of course. We had Earl Hyman, who plays Russell Huxtable. We have Clarice, I'm saying her name wrong, I'm sorry, Taylor as Anna Huxtable. And I feel like the lesson for this episode is follow your heart for the path you want for your life. Definitely, that's definitely the case. So I'm say follow your heart for the path you want for your life. That is truly the lesson of this episode. And the question I have for you is, was it hard for you to choose the post-secondary school that you wanted to go to? Let me know at Black TV Shows Pod at Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag Hillman. So we find out that now in the 3rd season, Denise is going to Hillman. Of course, A Different World did not start till season 4 of the Cosby Show. So when we see A Different World, Denise will be in her sophomore year. But and I can't wait to talk about A Different World. What the scheduling will be is that we're gonna continue with talking about season 3 on Mondays and Thursdays. Once we're done season 3, the plan is we're going to add A Different World onto the Mondays episode. And so this is happening when we're going to be talking about season 4. So that's not until September. So I know it's a long wait. But it'll be a great wait to get to talk about A Different World. I just want to, the reason why I'm doing that is so while I'm talking about A Different World, it'll be in the same timeline as The Cosby Show in terms of when it aired. It would be the same week that it aired. So then we can know what's happening in time with, I think, it's 1987 at that time. So that's basically the reason why I'm doing it that way. Let me know if you have other suggestions of how this podcast can improve. Tell me, I want to hear your opinion about the show. This is my favorite show of all time, and I want to hear from you guys. Just at me at Black TV Shows Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Let me know if there's any people that you listen to that would be make great hosts that are interested in the Cosby Show, that would love to talk about it, because I would love to have a co-host on the show. It would be amazing. I wish I had a co-host, because that would be fun, but I have no friends that are like serious about talking about Cosby Show. Like, I have friends that love the show, but they wouldn't like come on and talk. So just give me suggestions. I would love to hear. And now we're gonna move on to season 3, which is exciting. So as usual, if you're listening to Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and a review. That will help get this podcast heard by more people, and hopefully, have a lot of guests on the show in the future. Thank you all for sticking through it. You've sticking through it through season 1 and season 2 now, and now we're going into season 3. So I'm just excited. We're gonna end this episode with little Jimmy Scott singing the song "Evening in Paradise." And the next episode is episode 49, The Cosby Show season 3, episode 1, Bring Him Back Alive. So we're going to end this podcast with Evening in Paradise by Little Jimmy Scott, that